have been able to get our board meeting live, and hopefully you're viewing from home. We encourage people not to attend, and we appreciate that. We have an empty audience, and that's the way it should be. We're trying to follow all the orders that have been put out there to our community and across our state and so forth. So, but we are an educational entity and essential business, which allows us to be able to conduct our meeting, continue to do our business, but we're going to keep it to limited topics. Tonight, we're going to continue to move forward with our regular scheduled meeting, but on future board meetings, those are still in the unknown, and we'll see how those go. And if we do hold another meeting, the 31st of March is our next meeting. It'll be on just business that we absolutely need to get through and need to be approved, and so we'll keep it to a minimum of what our topics will be at our meeting. So we're going to move forward here and approve our agenda. So actually, let's have our closed session. The board did meet in closed session this evening, and I will have Trustee Aguila report out the closed session item.
Listen, closed session item, we have student number 10000505151. Majority of the board in closed session voted to include with designating and, okay, so, I'm sorry. So let me repeat that. A majority of the board in closed session voted Trustee Maria Aguila, and to also Greg Mack, and dissenting and abstaining. There was 5-0 and 2 absent to approve a settlement agreement with parent of a student who asserted special education claims against the district. The board approved reimbursement for private placement and services up to $90,000 in exchange for releases and waiver of claims against the district. Sorry, I don't have my glasses.
Are you good? You got through it, yeah. And just for everybody listening or watching, Trustee Millerick and Trustee Cooper are absent this evening. They were unable to make it. So we are, there's 5 of us here. We have a quorum, and we are spread out to keep our distance, our social distancing. So you'll see us kind of spread out a bit here. And all right, so moving on to approving our agenda this evening. Let me just, a couple things for our agenda going forward. Oh, we missed the pledge. Actually, let's back up. Boy, we were all, we did miss the Pledge of Allegiance, so let's please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag All right, thank you for reminding us to do that. That is important that we do that. All right, approval of our agenda, and just before we do that, there's one item, 14A. This is Measure G Bond Phase 2 District Minimum Facility Standards for middle and elementary schools, and approval of 3 school site projects not meeting district minimum facility standards. That item has been moved to the 31st of March. We're allowing just some more time on that item, and so that should be back at our next board meeting. We do have one thing at our table when we get to the consent. It's item 15E. That's a blue copy that you have at your table. That is for item 15E on your consent. It's just some minor changes, a date change, and some grammatical corrections. So it's very minimal. All right, so approval of our agenda this evening from the board. I need a motion.
I will move tonight's agenda as amended by the removal of item 14A.
Okay, thank you, Trustee Nell. First by Trustee Nell. Second by Trustee Mack. All those in favor? 5-0, 2 absent. And our consent agenda, I reminded you of 15E of the addendum or change. I am pulling item 15L, which is the change order number 5 for the grounds maintenance and operations. I will be recusing myself from that item due to the location of where I live. Is there any other item anybody else would like to pull? Trustee Gasson?
15E,
Okay.
the memorandum of understanding for Linwood Elementary School and Head Start.
Okay, 15E. Anybody else? All right, so approval of our consent regarding, excluding those two items.
So I will move approval of tonight's consent agenda, with the exceptions of pulling items E and L.
Okay, thank you. Second? Okay, so we have a first by trustee Nell, a second by trustee Gasson. All those in favor? 5-0. All right, I will, we'll wait. We'll move those down to the end of the discussion action, and we'll just take care of those at the end. All right, moving on. We've approved our consent. We do have a student presentation, but we are just, we've asked our students and principal and the people that were coming to not attend this evening. So we are just going to show their video, so we'll at least get something. This is Pleasant Valley Elementary.
Third grade students have been putting do good, be kind into practice. We have also been learning about mindfulness and helping others when they are having a bad day. Let's see what the third grade students have to say.
Doing good means helping others and working hard.
Doing good means picking up trash when no one else will. Doing good means picking up trash when it's on the ground.
Doing good means listening to the speaker when they're talking.
Doing good means that you pick somebody up when they're hurt. To do good means to be respectful and caring and help people whenever you can.
Doing good and being kind means to me to help people when they need it if they fall down.
Doing good means if someone fell down or got hurt, I would help them up.
Doing good means to me if somebody falls or they need something, you help them.
To do good means to try your hardest to listen to people and not talk.
Doing good means being a good person and being kind. Doing good means to help others out, and if someone has no one to play with, you have the opportunity to play with them.
Doing good means to help our classmates out with keyboarding.
Doing good means to help the earth.
Doing good means listening to people and helping and being nice to other people who feel bad. You could play with them if you don't have anyone to play with.
What about being kind? Being kind means helping people out if they don't need it and they see they need it.
One way that I can be kind is to help other people like your parents. One way to be kind is to not pollute the air and help the earth.
One way to be kind is to be helpful and be yourself.
One way to be kind means helping other kids. Being kind means helping other people out. Being kind means being nice to friends and family. Being kind means listening to the speaker. Being kind means helping people.
Being kind means if someone's absent, putting up their chair.
Being kind means
Being respectful to the teachers, duties. Being kind means helping someone when they're sad.
one way to be kind is if someone's sitting on a bench alone, you can sit with them. One way to be kind is that you can help people who are hurt.
Being kind means to me helping people that don't have as much as you.
One way that I can be kind is to, if someone doesn't have a snack, I can give them some of mine.
Mindfulness is important, but why?
Being mindful helps us get calm and relaxed. Being mindful helps us improve and get better. Being mindful means to never be rude and always be kind.
Being mindful means never take your anger on someone else.
Being mindful means to be a better person. Being mindful helps us
by being kind so everybody has a happy life.
And being mindful also means listening to the speaker when they are talking. Being mindful means to listen and focus when the teacher is talking.
Being mindful helps us so we're not mean to each other. Being mindful helps us be quieter.
Being mindful helps us concentrate and stay calm. Being mindful helps us become less stressful.
Being mindful can mean if you're upset, taking a few deep breaths and calming down. Being mindful helps you learn and focus. Being mindful helps each other.
We all have bad days. Sometimes we just need a friend.
If somebody's having a bad day, you could walk over to them in class and ask them if they want to talk about it.
If someone's having a bad day, you can help them and fix what's wrong and make it right.
If someone's having a bad day, you can sit with them and talk about it and see if they're just having a bad day or something's up. If someone's having a bad day, you can see what's going on or do what they want to do with them. If someone is having a bad day, you can check up and see what's wrong.
When someone's having a bad day, I can help them, make them laugh, do them good, and be kind to them, and make sure they have a good day.
If somebody's having a bad day, I can ask them how they're feeling.
If someone is having a bad day, I can ask them what's wrong or talk to them.
If someone's having a bad day, I can say, do you want to play?
If someone is having a bad day, I can play with them.
If someone is having a bad day, you can go up and play with them.
You can make friends with people by asking them if you want to be friends with them.
You can ask them if they want to be friends with you and go on fun trips together.
If someone having a bad day, make them happy.
If someone's having a bad day, you can clean up the desk for them. Thank you for watching our video. We hope you enjoyed it. And remember to always do good and be kind.
Thank,
Being kind
oh, these were the bloopers, right?
that if someone's fallen down and gotten
You can stop.
that you should help them.
Being mindful helps us by being kind.
There we go. Yeah, that was a blooper. Well, thank you, Pleasant Valley students, for putting that together. I think that was fitting for where we are today and what we're trying to deal with. All right, so moving on to our comments from the board. I would like to start with a comment, and then I'm going to turn it over to Chris. If you want to make a comment, right?
I got a lot of
Okay, so then, and then I'll go to the trustees. So let me just say, thank you to the staff here and to our sites and everybody who is tackling what we're experiencing. 10 days ago, we didn't know exactly where we would be. The conversations were starting, we knew this was happening, but what was going to happen with how teaching and learning was going to happen. And our staff really came together to provide remote learning with with our devices that we have. We were able to get the devices out to our students, and our teachers have been able to adapt to all of that and provide teaching and learning remotely. That is a huge accomplishment. And the staff that we have in this office really came together to roll that out and cross all the paths and dot all the I's and cross all the T's to make sure that it was as good as it was going to get and get rolled out. So on behalf of this board, we really appreciate the work that you did, Chris, as our leader here, and Amy, Jonathan, Leslie, Yancey, in making this happen. So thank you very much. This is unprecedented. This pandemic continues to strengthen every day. We don't know what the end result is going to be. We just have to take each day at a time. And we really appreciate the work that you have done. And please be patient, thoughtful, and respectful to each other. This doesn't work when we're angry of why schools aren't closed, why aren't you doing this, why aren't you doing that. You need to be respectful and be kind, just as we heard from our own students. So please do so, and we'll make sure we get the information out to you as soon as possible. They're trying to get it every day, at least some bit of information to our community to keep you informed. So thank you for the work. Thank you.
My pleasure. So I'm gonna start by just reading a couple things that I've written and have shared with the community this week. I'm tired. Our team's tired. I'm at that point where it gets really hard to keep doing great things, but that's where a lot of our team members are, and that's where a lot of our community members are, and we're not going to give up. We're going to keep working hard. We're going to push through how we're feeling. A couple things that I've written. You might feel that the 2019-20 school year has been a storm that continues to change but just won't go away. I know I have felt that way. We face so many challenges, including but not limited to life-changing tragedies, a student death, challenging labor relations, smoke days, PG&E power shutoffs, and now COVID-19. If you feel that this is a storm that just won't go away, we're in the same boat. I cannot be more proud of the great work done by our teachers, our support staff, our administrators, and particularly our education services team, pulling together a plan to keep students engaged with learning and connected to school during our school closure. There's a lot of research about the positive impacts to children who stay connected to their school and teachers during school closures. And thanks to the work of hundreds of people in our district, we're making that happen. This wouldn't happen without our team coming together. And I don't mean our team in this district office, I mean our team across Novato. So CSEA 312 has come together to ensure that our schools continue to provide the behind-the-scenes work to make this happen and perform essential functions within our community. A couple of examples, feeding more than 400 community members today and more than 300 community members yesterday. Getting our classrooms clean for when we do return to make sure that we're returning to a safe place. The Novato Federation of Teachers has been a great partner in figuring out what remote learning could look like in the city of Novato, embracing that, embracing getting better at it every day, embracing sharing the stuff that has worked great, and the challenges that we've faced and learning from all of them, and laughing, because there have been some pretty funny things that have happened along the way as we're learning about remote learning. And our administrators that continue to do whatever it takes to lead during this crazy and ever-changing time. We've asked a lot of them. We've asked them to lead their teams through this shifting narrative around public education, and they've done a fantastic job. The voters who approved Measure G, we would not have Chromebooks in the hands of all of our 3rd through 12th grade students if it were not for Measure G. Measure G helped us to purchase those. They took care of what would be a significant equity issue in our community right now, where there were haves who had devices and have-nots who didn't. We still are dealing with an equity issue about access. We're working hard with Comcast, who's been a great partner in providing free internet access to those who don't have it. There are some who live in communities that cannot access Comcast, so we're working to figure out how we work around that. As Debbie pointed out, a week and a half ago, we've been living in an educational system that had remained unchanged for generations, where kids came to school, they sat in front of their teachers, they learned from them and with them, and then at the end of the day, they went home. A week and a half, we were told, hey, you might want to get ready to do this a little bit differently. We're not going to give you any additional resources. We're not going to give you any information on what that should look like. Go get them. And you know what our team did? They didn't do what I thought. My first thought was, this is impossible. There's no way we can do this. What they did do is they said, we're going to find a solution to this. We're going to use the resources we have available. We're going to use the talent that we have in our school systems, in our buildings, and we're going to use the talent we have in this district office, and we're going to make it happen for our kids because that's what they need. And we've done it. And so every day, our kids in 3rd grade through 12th grade from home access their learning remotely. They get a chance to communicate with their teacher, typically by video, sometimes by voice. They're getting to touch in with that teacher every day. They're getting to maintain that connection with their school, with their classroom, with their community. And I am so proud of our district for making that happen. And it doesn't happen because 2 people made it happen, or 1 person made it happen, or 5 people made it happen. It's happening because hundreds of people across this system are making it happen, and we should be tremendously proud of them for making it happen. Also, as Debbie said, this is an unprecedented time in our country. We do not know where this goes from here. We don't know. Right now, we anticipate that this is going to be a 1-month closure. It could very well be a closure that extends 6 weeks, 8 weeks for the rest of the school year. I want everybody out there in Novato to know that we are not looking for short-term patches to student learning. We are building for the long term, hoping that we don't need it, hoping that we can get our kids back, but we are working very hard to make sure that we have robust learning systems that get better and better as our teachers learn how to use remote learning and how our students learn how to use remote learning. And whatever we get, whatever cards we get dealt, we're going to make the best of it. We know it isn't the same as having teachers in classrooms. We know that it isn't the same as having kids in classrooms. But we're going to do the best we can with the circumstances we have, and we're so happy that we have the Novato community on board with us in making it happen. So there you go. I don't know what that sound was, but that was maybe me dropping the mic.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Superintendent Koska. And just to, the decisions you've made in regards to through this process have not been in a silo. You have really, I mean, this county definitely comes together. Mary Jane Burke, our county superintendent, brings all superintendents together, all entities, and they're on a conference call every single day, sharing resources, sharing any information that they can. Conversations are being shared, learning is being shared, to make sure that there's collective decisions and they're able to bounce ideas off of each other, which is a huge asset that we can all come together and process everything and make the right decisions across the county. So.
Yeah, and so we talk a lot about the leadership of Mary Jane Burke as we go through important decisions like this. She really keeps us superintendents in very diverse communities across Marin County rowing in the same direction as much as we can. And when it's time for us to make our own decisions, she supports us with that as well. There's somebody else who's doing phenomenal leadership work in this county and doesn't get recognized enough for it, Dr. Matt Willis.
Yeah.
He has been so accessible to us superintendents, and I guarantee you that guy isn't getting any sleep. But he is a strong, passionate leader for what's right for public health in Marin County. He's accessible, he's available, he's articulate, he's kind, he's thoughtful. He's a leader that we are very lucky to have representing us in this county. I can't say enough good things about the work that Dr. Willis is doing to keep our community safe.
Thank you. All right, so Trustee Nell, you have anything you want to add or comments?
I don't have anything to add. I think that you and Superintendent Koska said it all, and I just wanted to share in my appreciation and respect for everyone involved in trying to make this work. So appreciate it. Thank you.
Trustee Mack.
More the same. Thank you, Chris, for everything you guys have done. But really, Jonathan, Amy, Jen, Nancy, Leslie, all the work you guys have done. Seriously, turning this thing around in the short amount of time we had. I know it's a work in progress, and it's going to get even better. But the fact that we're so far ahead already, I think one thing needs to be pointed out to everybody who might not be following as closely as we do. What's going on in this district is well beyond what you're seeing in other districts. Once again, Measure G, big part of that, but also it's this team here, this skeleton crew here that's doing all this work. So when people have issues about downtown costs, this is what it gets you. It gets planning, it gets things done, it gets our kids educated. So I want to really say thank you to all you guys for stepping up. You did a great job. And I know it's not done, but thank you in advance and thank you going back.
Trustee Gasson.
So I have day 2 of remote learning behind me. And I have to say that I'm a result, the experience my kids are having is incredible because I am not really, that's not my cup of tea, trying to teach them. And they are going with it. They're running with all of the remote access, telling me that I don't know what I'm doing, so leave them alone. So they were well set up for it with such a little amount of time. Both my girls, 5th and 7th grade, are so far respecting that they've got schoolwork to do and are doing it versus playing video games or watching TV. So we'll see how long that goes. That might change tomorrow. But I also want to acknowledge I have not been a fan of having the Chromebooks. As a mom, last thing I wanted was more devices, and I'm very grateful that both of my girls have access to having their own Chromebook to do their work and accessing a lot of things that they need to be able to continue on this time, for however long it goes. They have their own ability to, connect with people that they need to at school. The access to their teachers has been great. So I'm very appreciative that Measure G was funding all of those, especially for the kids who may not have otherwise have access to technology or a computer. And lastly, I just want to say, in terms of the community, I'm just constantly amazed at how many people want to step in to help support the kids in schools and asking if they can somehow help with the meals from our school sites that we're doing right now. And also just even more globally, the amount of information and things that our kids have now or access to. My favorite was Mo Willems, who I love. He's an illustrator and author of kids' books. And he's even done stuff now where you can go online and you can draw with him for a little bit. And all the different museums that are posting virtual tours and all of these things that our kids have access to because they're not having a chance to be at school and going on field trips or whatever. They're able to do them from home. Maybe not as much fun, but they get to see some stuff that they probably wouldn't have otherwise. So that's been great too.
Thank you. Trustee Gila.
Yeah, I just wanted to, not much to add to how thankful we are for all the work that everybody has done here at the district, and thank you to the teachers also for hanging in there. And I want to thank the parents. Parents are just, we need parents' involvement to make this be successful. And so I wanted to just give a word of encouragement for staff and parents and teachers to hang in there and to continue. And it is a work in progress, and things will get better. And I just want to remind the community to continue to be positive, and things will be fine. And take the opportunity that you can to rest. And I wanted to also just remind the seniors to just stay indoors and everybody else to be safe and smart. And so. And just prepare for the worst and but be positive and plan, and we'll get through this. So thank you.
Great. All right. Thank you for all those comments, and we'll move on to non-agenda public comment. I do not have any blue cards. We asked people to submit your comments to Leslie Benjamin, our Public Information Officer. If you wanted to make a comment on anything on the agenda or not on the agenda, we have not received anything, so we're going to continue to move forward. Moving on to our first staff report, 13A. This is school enrollment and capacity for the 2020-21 school year. And this is something that comes before us every year.
Good evening, trustees. Jonathan Fair, Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources. Before you is where we are in terms of enrollment capacity and potential space for our school sites next year. Capacity for our elementary schools is calculated using class sizes, while capacity for our secondary schools is calculated based on physical space. Most of our sites, as you can see, are at or have exceeded projected capacity for next school year. Only Rancho and San Jose are demonstrating potential enrollment space. Please note that these numbers are very fluid, and that enrollment is subject to change and can either increase or decrease as we get closer to the beginning of the school year. This is a staff report item only. No action is required. I can take questions or feedback at this time.
Trustee Gasson?
So when I was looking at this, particularly with San Jose Middle School, I knew that the enrollment there was declining. But then I see that Sinaloa has gone up. how do we maintain a balance? I know that these are just projections, but are there things that we can do to balance them out? Or is this presumption based on the incoming class from the feeder schools?
Incoming as well as the allocated FTE at those school sites.
Okay. So are we granting, like if people want to transfer to San Jose, that's a possibility?
Yes.
Okay. And then for the high schools, so you said something, I should have been listening. I read your report, but I think you said for secondary schools, it's also defined by space.
Correct.
So what are we going to do if we keep going higher? If part of our goal is to increase our enrollment and our kids in our schools, we don't really have anywhere to go for high school.
So we do have some physical space adjustments that can happen, as well as adjusting class size or adjusting kind of the number of students in each section of the classes, as well as operating. The school sites have a multiple period day, so this is based on a 5-period day. So we have that flexibility to make some of those changes, and Yancey can speak to it.
Okay, well, that makes sense. I'm not familiar with how the high school.
Former high school principal. So.
So then I guess I don't know if he needs to stand up again, but the additional, our buildings and stuff is that going to help? I would think we're going to be in a place where we have more space and for those kids. Okay, I see you nodding yes, and then. That was it. Because my biggest thing is, we've got some great programs at the high school. I'd hate to say, oh, we're out of space. So just making sure that we've got that. Oh, I guess one question, I don't know if you would know this, or maybe it's right there. I was wondering how many, oh no, that's the same slide as we have here. The next pot of kids coming, is there like a big group of kids coming through in a few years? I know we have like in 3rd grade at Pleasant Valley, there's like a lot of kids in that grade group. Do we have another one coming up soon?
I believe it's declining. Yancey.
Our average class, K-5 right now, is anywhere from 450 to 500 students, mostly right around 500.
Okay.
And our current senior class is around 650 kids. Those classes have moved into 500 have moved into the middle schools now, and they will be moving into the high schools in another 2 to 3 years. And that's a lot of where the declining enrollment for our enrollment projection comes. It continues to project about 500 students in each kindergarten class, and losing 600 to 650 graduating seniors each year, offset a little bit by interdistrict transfers in at the 9th grade level.
Right. Okay. That's great. Thank you.
Trustee Mack.
Just a quick question, Nancy, I might need you on this one. So just trying to understand how we're at capacity or over capacity according to this, but we're in declining enrollment. So what did this look like 2 years ago when we weren't in declining enrollment? And I suspect it's because the capacity numbers are not true capacity,
So the capacity numbers specifically for elementary are based on the FTE allocation. So if we had more students coming in, then we would allocate additional FTE. Therefore, we have physical. More capacity.
It's staff. Got it.
Correct.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
Anybody else? This is just a staff report. All right. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thank you.
The next item is 13B. This is Nevada Unified School District new courses. This item should be a discussion action item. It got misplaced as a staff report, so we'll get the presentation this evening from Amanda, and then it'll come back on consent on the 31st for approval.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Superintendent Koska, President Butler, and fellow trustees. So this evening, the presentation I'll be sharing with you is our new course outlines for our high school schools and the courses that they're looking forward to presenting to you guys for approval, which will be March 31st to give your consent. I just want to share that it's been really exciting to work with the teachers and the administrators and to really hear their passions come out and then thinking about what the desires from their students are moving forward. Oh, thank you. Okay, so the first section that I broke it down for you guys is for our visual and performing arts. NUSD is looking at adding 2 VAPA courses. The first one is the Art and Design 2 at Novato High School. It'd be a continuation of the current Art and Design 1, so to be building off of those foundational skills and moving forward. And that is would fulfill their VAPA requirement as well as an elective if they chose to. And then the second one is a music appreciation. This would be at Novato High, and it would not be a part of the MSA special program, but rather be a VAPA requirement for students who are looking to fulfill that in a non-performing musical way, which is really exciting to offer that as a selection as well. And then the next section is our CSU UC advanced courses. And so with this one, it's the CSU expository reading and writing. We currently have this for our 12th grade students, and they have curriculum available for 11th grade as well, and it's preparing them for advanced reading and writing in our classes. So this is another one that we're looking to get approval for, and this would be at Novato High next year. And then the next one is AP Environmental Science. That one we submitted through, and at this point, that one's already been approved as well through the UC system, of course. And this one would be at San Marin High School, and this would be for a science course. Thank you. The next one is our CTA pathways. So what's really exciting for us to share with you guys is that 3 of these courses will be their completers for the pathway. So the CTE pathway will have an introductory course, and then it'll have 1 to 2, maybe 3 concentrator courses, and then the final capstone would be for multimedia portfolio development, and then the Cisco Cybersecurity Essentials, as well as our healthcare experiential support. So these 3 courses that I just stated would be the capstones for each of those pathways, which would be really exciting for our kiddos who are participating in these CTE pathways to be able to finish up with a full spectrum of that career pathway and some sort of certification to be job ready if that's what they choose to do. And then the next one is the video game design and development. This is at Novato High School. We've put in, and it's been approved through the UC system for course 1 and 2. They're looking at opening this up for our students for just course 1 this coming school year, and then being able to build it forward, but they wanted to put it through and make sure that they would be able to see it take place for further years. So these are the courses that we're looking. There's 9 of them to be approved, and again, it'll go to you guys on the 31st for consent. So at this point, I'll open up for questions or any other comments or feedback.
Anything from the board? Any comments, feedback? Yeah. Did you have a question? No. Oh, okay. You're good. Okay. Oh, yeah. No. Question, comments. You know, it's either or.
Well, I just wanted to comment positively on the CTE courses. I think they demonstrate that we recognize out there in the real world of business and commerce, these are the types of things that our students are going to need to be able to perform and be good at. I suspect even to a great extent the video game design also our skill sets and learning that will also can be used for other things besides video gaming and presenting things. So this is exciting to me, and I'm glad that you guys are putting these together, and I look forward to approving them soon.
Thank you very much.
Much different than what we used to approve. So, nice. All right, if there's no other thing, anything else? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. And we'll get that on consent to get approved. All right, moving on to our discussion action. We did take off 14A. We'll move to 14B. And 14C kind of goes, they're hand in hand a little bit. This is the tentative agreements. Jonathan is back.
Hi again. So before you is a recommendation that you ratify the tentative agreement reached between the district and the Novato Federation of Teachers, NFT. The agreement is for 2 years, 2019-2020 and 2020-2021, and covers articles on compensation, employee benefits, class size, and resignation and retirement. This is an action item. Should you ratify the tentative agreement, the district will move forward with implementing the agreed upon articles. The district thanks NFT in the negotiations process. I can take questions or feedback at this time.
Okay, questions? Trustee Mack?
Just want to say thank you for all your time on this, Jonathan. You did a great job. I know it was a back and forth, and really appreciate your professionalism and your communication throughout the process. It was very strong. I think it really helped move the process along as efficiently as we could. So thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Anybody else? I'll just add that, our budget is challenged every day, but we've been able to come to consensus and agreement, and to be able to offer something, I think, is a big success in the end. No matter what the amount was, we're able to at least give something, and I think that matters. And every one of our employees brings value to this district, and we're trying to show that in a way of providing this additional compensation.
And actually, I'll say one more thing. And I want to put, they're not here, but I want to say thank you to NFT. Thank you to the teachers. Thank you to Mariah for all her leadership and trying to get this done. I know it wasn't easy. And thank you to all the teachers, because I know your heart is in the classroom and you just wanted to get this done. And appreciate that you were able to do that for us to get this done. And let's move on and do what we do and continue with all the heroic work we're doing right now with distance learning.
Thank you.
If I could just say, on behalf of Mariah, she really wanted to be here. She's doing the socially responsible thing by not being here. I'm sure it's difficult for her. I mean, this is the end of her negotiation cycle. So I appreciate the difficult decision that Mariah made to not be here. But just know that in her heart, she's here, and I'm sure she'd have something to say if she were here. So Mariah, I'm sorry that we're not in that situation right now. I appreciate your leadership.
All right, anybody else? Oh, great. This is an action item. The next three are, okay. So first by Trustee Mack, a second by Trustee Aguila. This is ratifying the tentative agreement with Novato Federation of Teachers, otherwise known as NFT, to settle negotiations for the 1920 and 2021 school years. All those in favor? 5-0, 2 absent. All right, moving on to CSEA.
Hi again. So before you is a recommendation that you ratify the tentative agreement reached between the district and the California School Employees Association, Chapter 312 CSEA. The agreement is for 2 years, 2019-2020 and 2020-2021, and covers articles on salary, hours and overtime, employee benefits, absence from duty, transfer and duration, and reopeners. This is an action item. Should you ratify the tentative agreement, the district will move forward with implementing the agreed upon articles. The district thanks CSEA in the negotiations process. I can take questions or feedback at this time.
Anybody? Trustee Nell.
Well, I want to thank you and CSEA for the work that you did in coming to this agreement. I think that this particular group of employees is sometimes overlooked and not thought of as often as they should be. Certainly in these new trying times, I think it would be very difficult to do what we've been doing without the support of our classified staff. So I just think it's important to recognize them on an equal basis along with everyone else. So look
well
forward to
said.
supporting the agreement.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you for saying that. All right, again, another action item. So,
I will move to accept the recommendation.
all right, so this is a first by Trustee Nell, a second by Trustee Mack, ratifying the tentative agreement with Novato Chapter 312 of the California School Employees Association, otherwise known as CSEA, to settle negotiations for the 2019-2020 school year and the 2020-21 school year. All those in favor? 5-0, 2 absent. All right, and our unrepresented group.
Hi again. So before you is a recommendation that you approve compensation that aligns with tentative agreements from NFT and CSEA for our unrepresented groups. This includes certificated management, classified occupational therapists, certified athletic trainers, confidential employees, classified supervisors, and coordinators. The recommendation is for 2 years, 2019-2020 and 2020-2021, and covers only compensation. This is an action item. Should you approve this recommendation, the district will move forward with implementing the compensation for our unrepresented groups. I can take questions or feedback at this time.
Anybody else? Just another very important group in our district, and just as deserving as the other.
Well, I'll just say thanks again for everything that this group is doing right now to keep this show on the road. It's obviously a tough time, and leadership is most important right now, and we have it, thank goodness. So, thank you.
I'll make a motion.
You'll make a motion, okay? So first by Trustee Aguila, second by Trustee Mack. All those in favor? 5-0, 2 absent. All right.
Thank you all.
Thank you. And thank you to Yancey, Jonathan, and Chris for, I know the negotiations have been happening since the very first day of school starting. So to come to this agreement is a huge success, I think, and thank you. Moving on to our second interim. This is item 14E. This is the 2019-2020 second interim budget report. Requirement that we do every year at this time.
All right, thank you. Real quick, sorry, Amy, could you grab Nancy? While Nancy's not here and coming into the room, being socially responsible, I appreciate that. I do want to thank her, Nancy Walker. I say it each time I'm up here around these things, but I do need to really emphasize how wonderful it is to have such a great person and her team as well. They're just wonderful. One thing I just want to really quickly say, and it's one story, but I think it's representative of all of our staff around this issue, is our payroll staff, who saw this coming the same time our certificated staff was looking at how we were going to do that remote learning. You know what they thought about? How are we going to get our employees paid, and what are going to be the issues around that? And they stepped up and they worked all week last week and this weekend to get all of our employees paid for their end of month payroll. And again, they're just wonderful, but I think it's a representative story of, there's hundreds of those stories in the district right now. And so I just wanted to share that as we go through. So, as President Butler noted, that the district is facing some budget pressures, and will likely be facing some additional budget pressures or some different budget pressures as we deal with the fallout of the COVID-19. Some of those include slowing state funding to NUSD and districts across the state, declining enrollment. We continue to project declining enrollment in the district. We have increases to our state-mandated pension programs. We have underfunded federal mandates. And another pressure is the low level of funding compared to our other districts in Marin County. In terms of for projected enrollment, we did see an increase in this year, which we are very happy about. But I think the trend line still continues in our projections. I think they treat this year as a 1-year blip. We're hoping it's not. We're hoping some of the wonderful things that we're doing in the classroom, with our marketing, with other things are helping. But 1 year does not make a trend. And so we continue to project declining enrollment. One thing to note was Trustee Gasson's question around class sizes. We are still projecting about 500 incoming kinders and losing approximately 600 seniors as they graduate out of the system. One thing to note on that Each student is about $10,000 in revenue to the district, so every 100 students in declining enrollment is about $1 million impact to the budget. In terms of the impact of state mandated pension contributions from 2013-14 to 2020-21, we've been seeing this graph for many years, and while we are getting towards the end of this and seeing the impacts of that, we will see increases specifically to the PERS rate go beyond this. And there is a potential that STRS will need additional contributions as well. The overall impact when the STRS funding program is fully implemented next year is just under $6 million to NUSD. And I've said it many times, but that's approximately 60 teachers. That's the impact. Underfunded federal mandates, the most well-known of these is the special education. It's the most significant example of it. And to be clear, this is a funding issue. This is a funding issue at the federal level, and it's a funding issue at the state level. Despite the promises, the federal government and the state government fund less than 40% of the cost of special education in schools. Again, it's not a services issue. This is a funding issue. This chart represents just a portion of it. It represents our cost of our services for students placed with the Marin County Office of Education. But as you can see, from 2012-13 to 2019-20, you've seen an over 100% increase in the costs of those programs. And those reflect similar costs across the system in that. One additional thing, I noted slowing state funding. We've also had, over the last 6 years, the state has given districts one-time funding each year, varying from $500,000 to almost $4 million for NUSD. This one-time money distorts ongoing funding issues from the state, noting when we look at our budget in the current year, and maybe we look close to a balanced budget, well, if some of that money is one time, then our ongoing funding issue obviously is larger. And then this is a chart that I think some of you guys have seen over the last couple of months, but we also continue to be on a per student basis at or near the bottom of the county in terms of per student funding. And that obviously causes some issues. So what have we done to react to these budget pressures? Over the last 2 years, in 2018-19, we formed the Budget Advisory Committee, this board made $2.2 million of reductions recommended by the Budget Advisory Committee. In 2019-20, we continued off of that work, did comprehensive outreach, getting feedback from parents, teachers, classified staff, our community, our students. And with that feedback, the board approved an additional $1.8 million in budget solutions and reductions. A total of $4 million in reductions, of which $1.6 million came from administration and district office. In 2020-2021, the district moved forward with an election to see if we could extend and increase the parcel tax with Measure A. The board approved a restructuring in the Maintenance, Operations, and Transportation Department, and our initial staffing allocations based on the projection that there is 100 students reduction for declining enrollment shows a reduction of approximately 5 FTE through attrition. Overall, if you look at where did those budget reductions and solutions come from in 2018-19 and 2019-20, $3 million of the $4 million came from administrative and DO cuts, as well as declining enrollment related cuts. And so those are keeping our same staffing formulas with less students. And it's important to note that we've been able to realize those savings without any layoffs to certificated staff during that period. As we move forward in this, it's going to be hard to keep this kind of ratio moving forward of this 3-to-1 ratio, as these are smaller portions of the overall district's budget. So one thing, we're talking about second interim, but this doesn't match up with, if some of you have noticed, with our second interim that's been approved tonight. I thought it was important to include the impact of the recently finished collective bargaining. So in the third line, it notes the impact of the collective bargaining and shows, as now the collective bargaining has been approved, our ending fund balance and our projected deficits in the next couple of years. To put it in perspective, we're looking at approximately $2 to $3 million that we're going to need to look for budget solutions in the next 2 years. Some of that will come from declining enrollment, but most of it will come from hard decisions that'll, be recommended by the community and staff and voted on by the board. It also, I want to be clear that these reflect current revenue projections that have not been updated since the January's governor's budget, and things have changed a little bit since then. In terms of unrestricted fund balance history, this shows actual fund balance percentage from 2010-11 and all the way through the projected 2021-2022. I want to be clear that this includes the recently approved collective bargaining agreements, and so it won't match up exactly with the multi-year projections in the second interim, but I thought it was important to note that given they're on the same night. As you can see, we've gone from 22% down to 12% at the end of 2018-19, and if the district does nothing, we'll be down to the state minimum by June 30th of 2022. So what are the next steps? We're in the middle of 2020-2021 budget development. We'll be finalizing some interim budget solutions. That's when we talked about those declining enrollment. We're going to look at things we can do around the edges, and we're going to update the list of potential budget solutions. The ones that we've been looking at over the last couple of years were generated a few years ago. Things have changed a little bit, so we'll be updating that list this spring. The governor will put out its May revision to the 2020-2021 budget. That'll be the most interesting May revision of my career, at least. So I'm interested to see how that works with all the competing pressures around this situation. We'll adopt our 2020-2021 budget in the middle of June. And then in the fall, we will work towards 2021-2022 budget balancing and finalizing the amount of solutions that we're going to need to implement for the fall of 2021. With that, I am happy to answer any questions.
Trustee Gasson.
So some questions, thinking next steps. The schools and community first initiative that's supposed to maybe go on November's ballot.
Yes.
What would be any kind of benefit that you would expect from that if it passed? And when does it go? When does that kind of thing go into effect?
So it very likely wouldn't go in until the 2021-2022 year. And you might even not even get a full year in terms of the impact. The total measure I've heard is between $8 and $9 billion statewide, although there's differing opinions on what will ultimately make it to the November ballot. I've heard there's potentially some changes to that as we move forward. Currently, with the projections that I saw, approximately $3 billion of that was focused to schools. So only about a third of that of the schools and community firsts was going to schools. Now, we have not seen any kind of projections around how that would be allocated, whether it would be allocated through the LCFF, or it would be allocated through some other new system that was created.
Okay.
So,
thank you. And then kind of same thinking, I'm just trying to think, as we're moving forward, the full and fair funding, I know that now is slotted for 2022. So there again, it wouldn't be in effect for like a year after that, potentially, correct?
Yeah, very, very likely. Wouldn't be at least 6 months to 8 months delayed before we would start seeing an impact of that for because the budget year would already have been approved and moved forward. But yeah, that was removed from the state ballot about a month ago. And I have not heard anything definite around the timing of them bringing it back.
Okay. Yeah, I was just at the PTA event. They just indicated it was 2022 at that point. But I guess my question here revolves around, okay, where else can we go? What else can we do? And it doesn't seem like there's much beyond those two things in the pipeline right now at the state level. So, just trying to think outside the box of where we can go besides making cuts. The other thing I just wanted to make note of, and I don't know where this was in terms of online, but the Marin Common Message
Yes.
that went with the full report that you gave. Going through it, I actually thought it was very helpful in just getting a good picture of what's going on. And I just wanted to mention it for people that might be listening, that it's only a few pages long. And the thing that struck me as I was going through here, and I actually highlighted a lot, besides all of the general statements about the governor's proposal for the 2020 and 21, is the focus on special ed funding, and the point that is being made here, which is actually really sad, and you kind of touched on it during your presentation. It says the federal government funds only about 10% of special education costs in California, woefully short of the stated 40% goal, and only a small fraction of preschool special education costs. And there was other information in here too. So, I think that even though we say it, seeing it coming out from MCOE and their this little report or whatever you want to call it was helpful to see. And
Yeah, absolutely. It's disappointing that when the IDEA was passed, that there was a goal of funding 40% by the federal government, and they've never really been very, very high above 10% of the costs.
Anyway, so thank you for your presentation.
Trustee Mack.
And actually, on that, can you go back to slide 6, the special education slide? Can't help but wonder if there's any coincidence with 2016 when everything started changing. But what would be helpful to me, and maybe you know it off the top of your head. So this is showing the share that we're paying of it, but the total expense. So maybe like another bar, like a stack bar that would show the total expense going out, showing our share increasing, and also to display is the total cost of special education relatively stable? It's just we're taking on a bigger share, or is it going up as well?
It's both. We're taking a larger share,
Right.
and it's outpacing the costs of other educational costs.
Okay.
We're seeing 5 to 10% increases in costs for special education services. We're seeing students coming to districts with higher needs and at earlier ages than we've seen in the past, and so those higher needs, require more services. And as I noted before, it truly is a funding issue. These services are needed, these services are required.
Right.
But the state and federal government, continue to fund less than 60%. Less than 40%, leaving us with over 60% of additional costs.
Well, what happened starting in 16 that you can recall?
So
Besides an election.
I want to be clear. This is just one example. This isn't the whole budget.
Right.
Special education accounts for approximately 20% of our budget. It's approximately $18 million annually. So this is just one example of the increases in costs. 2016, 17, and this, there were additional services and additional costs borne by the Marin County Office of Education, and we've been paying those costs. We've also been making more placements there over this time as our percentage of students with disabilities has increased, and more than that, the services that those students have needed have increased at a younger level, and especially in preschool. So that's where we're seeing a lot of the drivers. But obviously, students in preschool we're going to have for 13, 14, 15 years.
Right. Okay. And then to touch on another thing that Trustee Gasson was talking about regarding full and fair funding. This is somewhat rhetorical, so bear with me, but I might ask you to chime in, and Trustee Nell as well, because I know he has a lot of thoughts about this. But I just want to make clear to anybody out there who has any doubts that we've ever talked about full and fair funding, you need to really take a harder look at what we've been doing. That's been a chant we've been pushing ever since I got on this board. And it's one of the first things I learned, full and fair funding. And thanks to Trustee Nell, I've had a great education on what that means. And if I'm not mistaken, we even have maybe even multiple resolutions about that. And I just want to make that crystal clear. I know I'm preaching right now, but I was really disappointed to hear people in the recent cycle talking about how we haven't pushed hard enough. I don't know what that means. I mean, how can we push harder? We're up there twice a year in their face telling them what's going on. You guys saw me do it last time. And it's ridiculous to say that we're not doing enough. So anyway, if there's anything you want to add to that about how you've been pushing as well for full and fair funding, I'd invite the other trustees to chime in as well. But it's just something that really kind of irked me. But thank you.
I think this board, I think CSBA, I think AXA, I think CASBO have all been pushing for measures that support schools like the Full and Fair Funding Act. You know, we continue to be in the bottom 10 in number of states in per student funding, with being in the top 5 of most expensive states to live in. You know, that's a tough 1-2 punch to try. I mean, our teachers do an amazing job. Our classified staff do an amazing job. But yeah, it's tough when that per student funding is so low.
Trustee Nell.
So I want to go back to special education a little bit. Excuse me. I think I'm fine. I think I just got a frog in my throat. Everybody's getting nervous. I want to talk a little bit about cost, just to get, you know, an idea from you. So is it the exponential growth in the number of students with more serious problems that's driving the additional spending, or are we getting charged more for the same things that we used to pay for 10 years ago? What is driving such fast growth in the cost?
The biggest issue is the former of what you said, is our increasing services needed at a younger age for our students. That's the biggest push. The other push, and it came on, 6-7 years ago, was when mental health services transitioned from county mental health departments to school districts as the service provider. So it's actually more than 8 years ago, because it was Governor Schwarzenegger who did it. And that took a couple years to be implemented. But now mental health services, including counseling, including wraparound services, and up to the level of residential placements, which are students who are placed in facilities because of mental health issues that can be in other states, and they can cost upwards of $150,000 to $250,000 per year, that the district is responsible as under federal IDEA. It used to be mental health county mental health that used to be funded and pay for that as a reimbursement from the state. It now is funded as a grant, a per student grant out to SELPAs. That's our Marin SELPA for those services, and it's never been enough to fulfill the cost and the needs for our students. So it becomes another federal and state unfunded mandate.
It's good to talk about this a little bit, because I think it's important to point out that it's not like a management issue, that we're not negotiating better deals, or that we're not as efficient as we could be at it. It's essentially we're being asked, by society as educators to do more and more things, and the you titled it underfunded federal mandates, I think that the state has much of the blame as well. So I wouldn't leave them out of the unfunded mandate business. But it's important that people understand that we have been asked to do more and more every year without being given any additional funding, which brings up the full and fair funding. If you're going to ask somebody to do a job, you have to pay them what it's worth to do it. And there just seems to be some mindset up in our state legislature as well as the federal government that somehow they can just wish it, make it so, like they're Captain Picard or something like that, and not willing to give us the money to do it. So I just think it's important that the community understand when they see a spike in this spending, it isn't a mismanagement issue. It isn't cost beyond our control. It's simply we're being asked to do so much more than we ever had to before. And which is one of the reasons that we're advocating for full and fair funding, and that we actually went to our local community and try to have them understand this as well. So unfortunately, I think what's going to start happening is we're going to run out of money. We're not going to be able to provide these services, and the price of not being able to do that is going to be seen more readily. And maybe it's being exposed a little bit right now with our healthcare system. And the growth of this uncontrollable virus. So we're just not in a position, we don't have the resources, we don't have the people and the training to deal with these issues. And so we're all going to have to face up to it going forward. So next time, let's keep the state on the unfunded mandate list, because I tell you, a day doesn't go by up there where somebody isn't passing a bill that adds an extra workload to you and our teachers. Says you now have to do these things, this reporting, this action, keep track of that, provide this service.
Distance
They
learning.
don't add any money. Just a huge unfunded mandate.
Absolutely. I will make sure I add that because you are absolutely correct.
So that was my comment on the special education. But I kind of would, have a feeling. I just wanted to with this could very well be one of the last. Somewhat predictable second interim budget reviews that we're going to have in a really long time if this coronavirus thing continues to get out of control and we're continuing to do things that we've never done before without the funding to do it. And the effect on the private sector and the private economy as our students' parents and caretakers begin to lose their jobs, or whether it's temporary loss of income or permanent loss of income, this is just going to snowball into the revenue side of a tax collection at the state level. So right away, the Newsom's budget, it's out the window as far as I'm concerned. And I, quite frankly, don't know what's going on inside of your mind as the person who's responsible to start predicting these things. But I know you're going to do the best job you can, but I want you to understand, we understand that things are changing fast and dramatically, and that we should be preparing ourselves from a fiscal position to be ready to deal with almost anything when it comes to not having the money to do things anymore. So thank you for the last somewhat predictable second interim budget review. And I think fear is an okay thing to have going forward at this point.
I couldn't agree more with any of that. Trustee Gasson? Nope, go ahead.
So if you can add to your list of things to talk with me about this whole mental health transition. I actually appreciate that this conversation happened because it was interesting from the perspective I was working at the county mental health department in their accounting division for a while. And it was expensive. Well, no, what I was going to say was it's interesting how this came down to the school districts, not this particular whatever happened here, but that we would get mandates from the state on services that had to be provided. And they'd say, here's the bucket of money to do that, and we wouldn't have it, so we'd have to figure it out to provide those services. And so it seems like those things just got shifted down to the next player, and then, where do we go from here? And that's why, looking at the parcel tax, because we where else can we go? We keep getting asked for more and more things to do, and just making that connection tonight is interesting for me. So I'd like to maybe just chat with you to get a better feel for that as an added component to everything else that we're having to try to provide services for, and kind of frustrating.
All right, this is an action item.
Yes, so I'm asking for the approval of the second interim and to certify that we can meet our financial obligations for the current and plus 2 years.
I'll move the recommendation.
Okay. So first by trustee Nell, second by trustee Mack. All those in favor? 5-0, 2 absent. Thank you, Yancy.
I'm back,
Thank you.
so.
Yes,
Thank
you
you,
are.
Nancy and
Nancy.
We know who the
Slowly
one
say
behind the
that.
curtain is on this one.
You are correct, Superintendent Koska.
Okay, moving on to 14F. This is kind of goes with the tentative agreements, but this is the AB 1200 Public Disclosure of Collective Bargaining Agreement, and this is for NFT.
So AB 1200, it's kind of nice. We've seen kind of the two big sides of AB 1200 tonight. The first is the interim reporting and certifications by districts and those subsequent approvals by the county and the state. The other side is in approving when we approve tentative agreements with collective bargaining. So in our case, that's with NFT and CSEA. We need to disclose the financial impact of those agreements, and Superintendent Koska and myself have to sign that we can afford to make that in the current and 2 fiscal years, which we can in this certification does. I do need to note, just as we noted in the last report, so it's kind of nice, we've just said it, we do have budget solutions that we're going to need over the next couple of years in order to keep our reserve level above that state minimum. So we've talked about that in second interim, so I'm not going to get into that at that point, but you'll see in the certification a discussion of, this is funded by our ongoing revenues as well as budget solutions that we will need to come to in the 2021-2022 year, as well as potentially as we move further out. So.
Okay. All right, another action item. Trustee Nell?
Just a lot of the times, these agenda items are kind of a matter of fact passages, but for me it's another opportunity because it's our official public disclosure. We're basically telling the public, as your fiduciary, this is how we're gonna pull this off. And so I'm just gonna say what you said, but maybe in a slightly different way. We really do honor and respect the work of our employees, and we are busting our butts to come up with ways to increase their wages so they can make a living in our economy, quite frankly. And the cost of living is going up. So in our disclosure, as you reiterated, we're going to pull this off, not by miracle, but by math. We're going to make additional cuts to services to our students in our community in an effort to eke out a somewhat marginal increase in wages and salaries and benefits for our employees who are deserving, but it is going to come with a cost. And this is the disclosure to the public that what we will be doing. And I just clearly want that stated, that there will be sacrifice and less services available to our students and community as a result of us meeting our goal to compensate our employees. So with that, I'm prepared to support the recommendation.
A first by trustee Nell, second. Anybody? Trustee Gasson is a second. All those in favor? The AB 1200 for NFT. 5-0, 2 absent. Okay. Moving on to 14G. This is continuing on with the CSEA. Same thing.
Yeah, I should have clarified that we're doing one for each of the negotiations per AB 1200. But I think Trustee Nell said it very well, and so I don't have any additional. The same things. We look at this. We look at these in total.
Yeah,
Right.
which is why I mentioned before that by the time we reach these particular motions in our agenda
Right.
during negotiation times, they more or less become matter of fact. And
Check the
here we
box,
are at the
yeah.
second one. Ditto. I don't like using that word because it's often used by someone I despise publicly. But this is everything I said about the first one is true about this one.
Yeah.
So be prepared, public. We are disclosing to you that we can no longer provide the level of services that we have been, and big cuts are coming. I will move.
You will move, okay. So I have a first by trustee Nell. A second?
One second.
Okay, a second by trustee Aguila, approving the AB 1200 for CSEA. All those in favor? 5-0, 2 absent. All right. We have two more items. I almost said that concluded. We have two more items, 15E. These were the two items that were pulled off consent. They get moved to our discussion action, 15E and 15L. And Amy, I think, is coming up. Yeah, okay. 15E is the MOU for 2019-20, Community Action Marin Head Start, and Linwood Elementary School. This is the pre-K to 3 initiative, and trustee Gasson has pulled that. So I will turn it over to her.
Thank you. Thanks, Amy. My question just revolves around the dates. We're approving this now, or it's up for our approval, and the contract date started at the first of the school year. So just have questions about that.
Yep. That's largely due to staff error on our part, and we've already put in some measures within the system so that that's going to get flagged for us earlier. To clarify, this is funds that comes from the Marin Community Foundation, and it's part of our P3 grant. And so it's largely a sort of a pass-through for our district as we take these funds and move those forward to the preschools. And the preschools are the individuals who partnered with us to apply for that grant fund. So there's kind of this preliminary agreement with Marin Community Foundation, and on our end, we just didn't get the timeline right, but we'll make sure that's rectified in the future.
I was thinking it might be a funding thing since I knew that it's a pass-through, but when do we usually get those funds then? Or I guess going forward, are we going to do the contract for next year at the end of one of our last meetings, or?
Yes, ma'am. So we'll get the grant funds awarded at the end of the summer, so in June. And then we already have that as a staff task for us to get these MOUs in front of you before the school year starts.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thank you for that.
All right, thank you, trustee Gasson. You want to make a motion?
Sure. Motion to approve the MOU for Community Action Marin and Marin Head Start.
Okay, need a second. Trustee Mack, thank you for a second. All those in favor? 5-0. 2 absent. The last item is the one that I've recused myself from. Just to remind the community, I recused myself due to the location of where I live, and I've recused myself from the very beginning. This is the change order for number 5 for the grounds maintenance and operation building. So I will turn it over for a motion.
Well, I'm prepared to move this motion and the recommendation forward, so.
Okay. Thank you,
so.
trustee Nell. Okay, and a second by trustee Mack. All those in favor? Okay, that's 4-0, 2 absent, 1 recusal. Barely sneaked on by. Okay, so that concludes our evening meeting for this evening. Boy, I'm a little off tonight. Yes. Superintendent Koska would like to add something.
So I want to close the show tonight. To everybody out there, all 7 of you, and to all 5 of you and our 2 trustees that want to be here but can't. This is an unprecedented time in public education, in our world, in our society. We got a whole bunch of people that are trying new things. We're going to have fantastic successes, and we're going to have fantastic failures, and we're going to learn from all of them, and we're going to keep doing better. And we need our community, we need our students, we need our staff to provide a little grace when things don't go perfectly, when things get a little bit sideways, when somebody tries something that they think is going to be great and it isn't great. give us a little bit of grace as we're working through this new phase. We are all working as hard as we can. We are all trying to do the best we can for our kids in a time that we didn't predict was possible 2 or 3 weeks ago. So hang in there with us. Keep supporting Novato Unified School District. Keep supporting Novato. And we're going to do great things together.
Thank you. Thank you. The next meeting is the 31st of March. As of right now, we're still going to hold that meeting, but that'll be forthcoming, and we'll put a notice out for sure and explain if we're not going to do the public comment or we're going to keep it the same way like we did tonight. We'll put a notice out with all the explanation. This meeting's adjourned.